All right, what is good, ladies and gentlemen, is the Master Viewer back again with another review, and today we're doing a review for Toy Story 3. This is the third film in the Toy Story franchise. It is a rewatch for me, and a bit of background I will give. I very much like this film when I was younger. I very much like the second and the third film, and so going to this, I went into it with pretty high expectations, I would say, and I would say my expectations were pretty much met, I would say. So, yeah, with that said, let us just begin, starting off with the plot. So the plot of this film is that Andy, we have a time skip. Andy is all grown up now. He is preparing to go off to college, and the toys have not been played with in years. So they end up trying to make a last-ditch effort to get Andy to notice them and play with them, but he doesn't end up playing with them. And Andy's mom ends up telling him that he has to decide what he wants to do with the toys, whether to donate them, whether to throw them out, or put them in the attic. And so Andy ultimately decides he is going to put them in the attic, but he puts them in a trash bag. So he's planning to put the trash back in the attic, but because of a mishap that happens, just like a mistake ends up causing Andy's mom to accidentally pick up the trash bag and then take them to the dump. And so the toys, they almost get crushed by the dump, and they think that Andy has abandoned them and is throwing them out. So the toys end up deciding, Woody was the only one that actually Andy was planning to take to college. And so the toys, they decide that they are going to go to Sunnyside Daycare, which is a daycare that exists in this world. And so they end up going into the donation box, where they end up in Sunnyside Daycare. Woody ends up going along with them because he's trying to get them to not go, but then he ends up having to go along with them because he gets trapped in the car along with Buzz and the rest of them. So they end up in Sunnyside Daycare, and at first it seems like this very nice place where kids, they play with toys, and the toys are able to be played with. And when the kids get too old, new kids show up. So it all seems well and good, but then the toys, they end up getting placed in the Caterpillar room, which is for the much younger kids that are less mature and do not know how to play with toys properly. They are very reckless with the toys, very unhygienic and stuff, and so it is not a place that is very good for little kids. So I mean, it's not a place that is very good for it, like the toys get treated badly there. That's the point I'm trying to get across. So yeah, it's not a good situation that they're in. And then they find out that basically Lotso, who is the bear that is kind of in charge of the whole daycare, he's like the toy that's on the top of the hierarchy there. He like presents himself as this very lovable bear and stuff, and like he's a good dude and all. But then it is revealed that he is actually running basically a prison system where new toys, they end up having to be the sacrifices for the Caterpillar room, so that way the veteran toys don't have to deal with like little kids and stuff. But in the process, usually it leads to the new toys end up breaking, and so it's just a cycle where more new toys come in. They end up having to go to the Caterpillar room, while the other toys, they're just like permanently in the butterfly room. So yeah, that is what happens. And so the movie becomes a prison breakout film, basically. At first, Woody himself escapes from Sunnyside Daycare, and then he ends up like on a tree at some point, and then this girl Bonnie, who is the daughter of the daycare manager, ends up finding him, and so she takes him home with her. And so Woody ends up meeting all these other toys from Bonnie's house, and then they tell him about the backstory of Sunnyside, basically, of how it's like not a good place. And Lotso, like they explain to him his backstory as well. So yeah, this leads to Woody. He goes back to Sunnyside Daycare, and now the movie becomes a prison break film where Woody has to work with the other toys in order to break themselves out. At some point, also, Buzz, he tried to gather some intel on the place, but he ends up getting captured by Ken, the Barbie doll. He's a character in this film. He ends up, along with some of the other toys from the butterfly room. Yeah, I think it's called the butterfly room. I might be mistaken on that, but it would make sense, like the butterfly room and the caterpillar room, so that seems logically consistent. So Buzz ends up getting captured. They end up reverting him to his demo mode, which causes him to think once again that he is a space ranger. And he also, later on at a certain point, when the toys actually manage to capture him and then they reboot him, they set him to like even a different setting that like makes him start speaking Spanish. So that also happens at a certain point. Anyway, eventually the toys, they have this whole breakout plan that leads to them. The only way that they can actually escape is by getting to a dumpster area where it's like the trash or old toys get thrown out and stuff. And so this is where there's a confrontation between Lotso and the rest of the toys, and like some of the other toys from the daycare are also there, and it leads to Woody confronting Lotso about his past with Daisy, the girl that used to love him and stuff. And so yeah, it leads to Big Baby, who's another character that is kind of like the main muscle of, I guess, the daycare toys. Big Baby ends up getting reminded of Daisy, gets very sad, but Lotso starts like insulting her, saying how she like Daisy didn't love her ever, and so this causes Big Baby to throw Lotso into the dump truck, or the dumpster, which is about to get taken by the dump truck. So yeah, then I think it's actually Big Baby closes the dumpster on Lotso, so everything seems good and fine. So everyone is escaping somehow. Though this seems kind of just for the purposes of plot, so that the plot can continue. One of the alien toys ends up getting stuck on the dumpster after it all reclosed. So I don't know how that managed to happen, but it did anyway. And so this leads to Woody having to go back trying to save him, and then in the process, Lotso manages to bring Woody back into the dumpster, and so Woody is now in the dumpster. The rest of the toys end up following him, so everyone's now in the dumpster basically. And this leads into the final act of the film, where all of the toys, they are in the dumpster and they have to escape. And it's a really good final sequence, and it culminates with all the toys. They are just this incredible sequence of just all the toys like kind of accepting their fate. They all start holding hands and stuff in their final moments. But then the alien toys, who at some point a bit earlier got separated from the rest of the toys, they managed to save them using a claw that is at the dumpster. So yep, save the toys. The toys are saved now. Everything is good. Lotso ends up also kind of escaping, but then gets captured by like not captured, but some truckers end up finding him, and so he's tied to the hood of a truck. So that is his fate, I guess. And then finally, the film ends with Andy. The toys, they manage to make it all the way back to Andy's house, and they wash themselves off. They kind of put themselves in the box of not donations, but they put themselves in the attic box. Woody puts himself in the college box, basically. But then Woody ultimately decides to leave a note on Andy's on the box, basically suggesting to Andy that he should donate the toys to Bonnie, aka the daughter of the daycare woman. So that's what he ultimately ends up deciding to do. He brings the toys to Bonnie, where he introduces Bonnie to all the toys and stuff, and it's like a nice scene of like one final kind of goodbye between Andy and the toys. Like there's like a play sequence. Ultimately, he also he wasn't planning to give away Woody, but then when he realizes Woody was in the box with the rest of the toys, so he ultimately decides, he's kind of hesitant at first, but then ultimately he decides that Bonnie will take good care of them, so he does give up Woody as well. So there's a final play sequence between Andy and the toys, and it's really well done, I would say, and it culminates in finally, Andy drives off to college, Woody and the rest of the toys, they are now with Bonnie, and that is how the film ends. And so, overall the plot, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, same as the last film, which I gave also a 4 out of 5 for the plot. I like this plot. I wouldn't say it is I'm not going to give it a 5 out of 5. It's not like one of my favorite plots of all time, but I still think that it is very good, especially the beginning and especially the ending. I think the middle section does feel a bit, not filler, I want to say, it's definitely a lot of stuff going on, but it just might be the fact that it all just takes place in this one daycare, so it doesn't really feel, maybe it feels like the setting is a bit, I think that we'll get to that with the setting. I think it's a very good setting, but at the same time, it just feels like Woody's he's breaking out, and then he's coming back, and then it's just a bunch of, I don't know, the prison sequences, they're usually good, prison escape movies and stuff, but it can feel a bit stale at times, maybe with the pacing, so the middle section I didn't care for as much as the much more tense earlier sequences and the later sequences. I like the start and end of the film, I would say. So in terms of the characters, I still think that all the main toys, they are still all good. I don't really have anything new to say about them. You have Buzz, where he does start speaking Spanish for a bit, which it does feel just a bit like a gimmick that they wanted to throw in, which it's fine, I guess, a bit entertaining. Besides that, there is, Lotso as the villain. I think that he is probably the most effective villain that we've seen up to this point. He seems more sinister than the Prospector from the last film, I would say. And by proxy, also Al was just kind of a greedy dude that was willing to steal Woody for the sake of making money. So let's hear any other characters. Ken, I thought that Ken was a pretty good character as well. Barbie, she's also we've seen Barbies before in the last film, but this is an actual Barbie that is part of the crew in this film. She was a toy of Molly's, that Andy's sister, that Molly ended up getting rid of. So I think that Barbie is good as well. The other toys that are meant to be also working for Lotso, they are good. Don't really have much to say about them. Overall, the characters I would probably just give another 6.5. I think up until this point I've just given the characters just consistent 6.5 throughout all the movies. And I think that these are good characters. I'll get more into them with the character ranking when I eventually get to that. But for now, I'm just going to give it a 6.5, I would say. In terms of the settings, so I like the setting. It is definitely, it mostly just takes place in this daycare, which they do a great job of encapsulating this vibe of a prison setting. They managed to take a daycare and then making it feel like a prison, which I would say works pretty well. And yeah, but once again, it does feel just a bit stale at times with just these, I don't know, the daycare set. Maybe it's just because I used to work in a daycare, and like first of all, I didn't like it at all. It was I had to do it for like some volunteer work for high school. So yeah, anyway, it was not fun, I'll say that. And they did a pretty good job of portraying it, though. Like from what I remember from working at a daycare, it's a very unhygienic place. It's very messy and stuff. And so they did a good job of encapsulating the feel of it. But at the same time, it might just be because I just didn't like working at the daycare. So it's like the fact that a lot of this middle section of the movie takes place in a daycare, maybe it just brings back bad memories, I would say. So, but yeah, I would say that it works well for definitely the purposes of a prison film. It's actually very creative, like having a prison film that takes place in a child daycare. I think that is pretty creative. So there's also like the landfill at the end of the film. I think that was also a really good final like area for the third act. I would say it feels very extremely tense, and that like the toys are in actual danger, much more so than any point in the second film, I would say. So I'm going to give the settings, I would say, I'm going to go 7 out of 10. I'm going to say pretty good settings, and yeah. In terms of the visuals, I think this came out around the 2010s, I'm pretty sure. So it definitely looks a lot more modern. The characters, like the humans themselves, Andy, he does actually look like he doesn't look like the CGI looks actually decent to look at, and it doesn't look like how he did in the first and arguably the second film as well, where the CGI still felt a bit off, like it was still kind of not where it needed to be to look decent, I would say. So the visuals in this case, definitely the actual human characters look a lot better, I would say. The toy characters, they also look, I would say, a lot more polished, I would say. So overall, I would give the visuals probably we'll go like a 6.5, we'll say good visuals, and yeah. In terms of the worst thing, I would probably just say, again, the middle section. Like, it's not even bad. I think out of all the things in the film, it was my least favorite part. Not even like necessarily the whole middle section. It's just like certain aspects of the middle section. Maybe just the pacing. Maybe because it is like the largest chunk in the film, and like compared to the start of the film and the end of the film, it is just not as good in comparison. So, but even so, I would still give the middle of the film, I would give it like a 6.5, I'm going to say. So we'll go a 6.5 for the middle section, as well as the visuals and the characters, I guess, just all those. We will reuse the worst score of a 6.5. In terms of the best thing, definitely the third act. The third act, honestly, the whole the dumpster, the landfill sequence, as well as Andy ultimately giving up his toys, I think that it was honestly between an 8.5 to a 9. I thought it was between amazing and incredible. And I am going to be, I don't know if I should be harsh or generous. It might be the recency bias, but honestly, I'm thinking a 9. Like, I do think it was genuinely incredible. The sequence of like just all the toys like holding hands together, accepting their fate. I thought it was really good, as well as the ultimate Andy's decision to ultimately like give up his toys, as well as Woody, like when he has to decide to ultimately give up Woody. I thought that was very good. I'm going to be a bit harsh with it. I think probably there is a bit of recency bias at play, so I'm going to be harsh with it. I'm just going to give it an 8.5. I thought that the third act was amazing, and yeah, definitely the best third act, I would say, of like the second film also had a really good third act with like the whole airport sequence with the suitcases. I thought that was very cool, but this one definitely hit more like emotionally, like deeply, I would say. So yeah. Any extra notes that I have here? Let's see here. It was interesting Woody's like kind of contrast, where he was very much telling his toys, like the rest of the toys, at the like towards the start of the film, he was saying like, "Oh, we got to be there for Woody." It's like we can't just abandon him. We can't just abandon him. But in contrast, in the last film, his whole character arc was basically saying like how he's going to abandon Andy because at this point he's like getting like he's being worn out, and so Andy's not going to play with him forever. So bit of hypocrisy there, but not enough for me to like yeah, it's a bit of hypocrisy, but at the same time, it's like at the end of the second film, he did learn his lesson to like always be there for Andy. So it's not really hypocrisy. If anything, it's actually just him being logically consistent with his character up until this point in the franchise. So, and yeah, other than that, I already mentioned everything, so I'm going to do the calculations. So King Crimson. All right, so it ends up coming out to about a 7 out of 10, which would be pretty good. And I think I'd give it a bit more than that. I would honestly I'm going to be generous with it. I'm going to give it a 7.5. I would say that this was a very good film. Better than the first one, not as good as the second one. I still think that the second one is still probably my favorite overall, but this one definitely had some stronger aspects. Once again, the ending and start of this film, I do think, are probably better than the second film and the first film, but yeah, the middle chunk of it was, I think the second film was like consistently good the entire way through, whereas this film had like a stronger start and stronger ending, but then the middle section was like a bit not as good as the middle section of the second film, I would say. But even so, this film was still, I would say, I'm going to give it a 7.5. I'm going to say it was very good. And yeah, so that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stories, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, leave it in the comments and I will maybe possibly check it out. With that said, that is pretty much all there is to it. So let's leave it at that.